This is the 7th day of the September 93 7-day retreat in Springwater. For this last talk, as has been our custom, we will read from different authors, people who've come to retreat for many years, many times, have heard most of this. But there are always new people. And even if one has heard it before, if the mind or the listening is open and fresh, then something new can be discovered in the old. We'll first read a few selections from the teachings of Wangpo as translated by John Blofeld. On the Transmission of the Mind is the subtitle. The selections were gathered and written down by Wangpo's disciple Shensu Peisu. They lived in the 10th century in China. Peisu was a Buddhist scholar, a disciple of Wangpo, and the governor of the province where Wangpo taught. Wangpo belonged to the Buddhist tradition, to the Zen sect. Some of the words have been translated into English, and this is not a complete presentation of Wangpo. Words, sentences, and paragraphs have been eliminated where it was not felt that it was necessary to read those. The Master said to me, all the Buddhas and all sentient beings are nothing but the one mind beside which nothing exists. This mind, which is without beginning, is unborn and indestructible. It is not green nor yellow and has neither form nor appearance. It does not belong to the categories of things which exist or do not exist, nor can it be thought of in terms of young or old. It is neither long nor short, big nor small, for it transcends all limits, measures, names, traces, and comparisons. It is that which you see before you. Begin to reason about it, and you at once fall into error. It is like the boundless void which cannot be fathomed or measured. The one mind alone is the Buddha, and there is no distinction between the Buddha and sentient beings, but that sentient beings are attached to forms and so seek externally for Buddhahood. By their very seeking, they lose it, for that is using mind to grasp mind. Even though they do their utmost for a full eon, they will not be able to attain to it. People do not know that if they put a stop to conceptual thought and forget their anxiety, it will appear before them. For this mind is the Buddha, and the Buddha is all living beings. It is not the less for being manifested in ordinary beings, nor is it greater for being manifested in the Buddhas. Our original nature is in highest truth devoid of any atom of objectivity. It is void, omnipresent, silent, pure. It is glorious and mysterious, peaceful joy, and that is all. Enter deeply into it by awakening to it yourself. That which is before you is it, in all its fullness, utterly complete. There is naught beside. Even if you go through all the stages of progress, one by one, when at last in a single flash you attain to realization, you will only be realizing that which has been with you all the time. And by all the foregoing stages, you will have added nothing at all. You will come to look upon those eons of work and achievement as no better than unreal actions performed in a dream. And here's a dialogue between Pe Su and Huang Po, which took place about 1,000 years ago. What is the way and how must it be followed? Huang Po, what sort of thing do you suppose the way to be that you should wish to follow it? Questioner, what instructions have the masters everywhere given for meditation practice and the study of the truth? Huang Po, words used to attract the dull of wit are not to be relied on. Questioner, if those teachings were meant for the dull-witted, I have yet to hear what truth has been taught to those of really high capacity. Huang Po, if they are really people of high capacity, where could they find people to follow? If they seek from within themselves, they will find nothing tangible. How much less can they find a teaching worthy of their attention elsewhere? Do not look to what is called the true teaching by preachers, for what sort of truth could that be? Pe Su, if that is so, should we not seek for anything at all? Huang Po, by conceding this, you would save yourself a lot of mental effort. Questioner, but in this way everything would be eliminated. There cannot just be nothing. Huang Po, who called it nothing? Who was this fellow? But you wanted to seek for something. Pe Su, since there's no need to seek, why do you also say that not everything is eliminated? Huang Po, not to seek is to rest tranquil. Who told you to eliminate anything? Look at the void in front of your eyes. How can you produce it or eliminate it? The void not meaning a vacuum, but crows cawing, leaves moving, sun shining, and no resistance or grasping. Questioner, do you mean that we should not form concepts as human beings normally do? Huang Po, I have not prevented you. But concepts are related to the senses, and when feeling takes place and concepts are formed, wisdom is shut out. Questioner, then should we avoid any feeling in relation to the truth or the true teaching? Huang Po, where no feeling arises, who can say that you are right? Questioner, why do you speak as though I was mistaken in all the questions I've asked your reverence? Huang Po, you're a man who doesn't understand what is said to him. What is all this about being mistaken? Questioner. Up to now you have refuted everything which has been said. You have done nothing to point out the true teaching to us, or the truth. Wangpo, in truth there is no confusion, but you produce confusion by such questions. What sort of true teaching can you go seeking for? Questioner. Since the confusion arises from my questions, what will your reverence's answer be? Wangpo. Observe things as they are and don't pay attention to other people. There are some people just like mad dogs barking at everything that moves, even barking when the wind stirs among the grass and leaves. Once I put this question to the Master: how many of the 400 or 500 persons gathered here on this mountain have fully understood your reverence's teaching? The Master answered, their number cannot be known. Why? Because this way is through mind awakening. How can it be conveyed in words? Speech only produces some effect when it falls on the uninstructed ears of children. Here are some poems from One Robe, One Bowl, Zen poetry of Ryokan, translated by John Stevens. This is a lovely book because there are poems for each season. So we can always move after a while to another section. Fall. Poem of early fall. Ryokan was born in 1758. Lived as a recluse in the mountains. After a night of rain, water covers the village path. This morning, the thick grass by my hut is cool. In the window, distant mountains, the color of blue-green jade. Outside, a river flows like shimmering silk. Under a cliff near my hut, I wash out my sore ear with pure spring water. In the trees, cicadas recite their fall verse. I had prepared my robe and staff for a walk, but the quiet beauty keeps me here. Autumn night, unable to sleep, I leave my tiny cottage. Fall insects cry under the rocks, and the cold branches are sparsely covered. Far away from deep in the valley, the sound of water. The moon rises slowly over the highest peak. I stand there quietly for a long time, and my robe becomes moist with dew. If there's beauty, there must be ugliness. If there's right, there must be wrong. Wisdom and ignorance are complementary, and illusion and enlightenment cannot be separated. This is an old truth, Don't think it was discovered recently. I want this, I want that, is nothing but foolishness. I'll tell you a secret. All things are impermanent. Light sleep, the bane of old age, dozing off, evening dreams, waking again. The fire in the hearth flickers. All night a steady rain pours off the banana tree. Now is the time I wish to share my feelings, but there is no one. Today's begging is finished. At the crossroads I wander by the side of Hatchiman Shrine, talking with some children. Last year, a foolish monk. This year, no change. Soaring birds disappear over the distant mountains. Leaves fall continually in the quiet garden. Lonely autumn breezes. An old monk in his black robe. I stand alone. Intermittent rain. In my hermitage, a solitary light flickers as dreams return. Outside, the sound of falling raindrops. A crow sits in darkness on the wall. The fireplace is cold. No charcoal awaits my imagined visitors. I reach for a volume of poems. Tonight, in solitude, deep emotion. How can I explain it the following day? A thief has stolen my cushion and mat. Why did he break into my hermitage? The door is never locked. The night is ending and I sit alone by the window. A sparse rain falls gently against the bamboo grove. Please, wait for the light of the moon. The mountain path is covered with fallen chestnuts. The wind has brought enough fallen leaves to make a fire. A cold autumn night, I clutch my white robe. The bright, clear moon covers the sky. When it is evening, please come to my hut to listen to the insects sing. I will also introduce you to the autumn fields. Morning, cutting firewood, filling my jug with pure water, gathering wild grasses, while a cool autumn rain gently falls. lying on my grass pillow, dreaming about this dream world again, lonely, fitful sleep. As I watch the children happily playing, without realizing it, my eyes fill with tears. Thinking about the people in this floating world far into the night, my sleeve is wet with tears. The thief left it behind, the moon at the window. Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke. It's really not just a letter to a poet. You ask whether your verses are good. You ask me. You have asked others before. You send them to magazines. You compare them with other poems. And you are disturbed when certain editors reject your efforts. Now, since you have allowed me to advise you, I beg you to give up all that. You're looking outward, and that, above all, you should not do. Now. Nobody can counsel and help you. Nobody. There's only one single way. Go into yourself. Search for the reason that bids you to write. Find out whether it is spreading out its roots in the deepest places of your heart. Acknowledge to yourself whether you would have to die if it were denied you to write. And this above all, ask yourself in the stillest hour of your night, must I write? Delve into yourself for a deep answer. And if this should be affirmative, if you may meet this earnest question with a strong and simple I must, then build your life according to this necessity. Your life, even into its most indifferent and slightest hour, must be a sign of this urge and a testimony to it. Then draw near to nature. Then try, like some first human being, to say what you see and experience and love and lose. Do not write love poems. Avoid at first those forms that are too facile and commonplace. They are the most difficult, for it takes a great, fully matured power to give something of your own, where good and even excellent traditions come to mind in quantity. Therefore, save yourself from these general themes and seek those which your own everyday life offers you. Describe your sorrows and desires, passing thoughts, and the belief in some sort of beauty. Describe all these with loving, quiet, humble sincerity. If your daily life seems poor, do not blame it. Tell yourself that you are not poet enough to call forth its riches. For to the Creator there is no poverty and no poor indifferent place. And if out of this turning inward, out of this absorption into your own world, verses come, then it will not occur to you to ask anyone whether they are good verses. Nor will you try to interest magazines in your poems. For you will see in them a voice of your life. A work of art is good if it has sprung from necessity. In this nature of its origin lies the judgment of it. There is no other. Therefore, my dear sir, I know no advice for you save this: to go into yourself and test the deeps or the depths in which your life takes rise. Test the depths in which your life takes rise. At its source you will find the answer to the question whether you must create. Is an excerpt from Krishnamurti's talks and writings compiled by the Krishnamurti Foundation, India. And the selection is from a talk given in Bombay in 1955. Questioner: what is this self-knowledge of which you speak, and how can I acquire it? Krishnamurti: you have extraordinary ideas about self-knowledge, that to have self-knowledge you must practice, you must meditate, you must do all kinds of things. It is very simple, sir. The first step is the last step in self-knowledge. The beginning is the end. The first step is what matters, because self-knowledge is not something you can learn from another. No one can teach you self-knowledge. You have to find out for yourself. It must be your own discovery, and that discovery is not something tremendous, fantastic. It is very simple. After all, to know yourself is to watch your behavior, your words, what you do in your everyday relationships. That is all. Begin with that, and you will see how extraordinarily difficult it is to be aware. Just to watch the manner of your behavior, the words you use to your servant, to your boss, the attitude you have with regard to people, to ideas and to things. Just watch your thoughts, your motives, in the mirror of relationship. And you will see that the moment you watch, you want to correct. You say, this is good and that is bad. I must do this and not that. When you see yourself in the mirror of relationship, your approach is one of condemnation or justification. Therefore, you distort what you see. Whereas, if you simply observe in that mirror your attitude with regard to people, to ideas and to things, if you just see the fact without judgment, without condemnation or acceptance, then you will find that that very perception has its own action. That is the beginning of self-knowledge. To watch yourself, to observe what you do, what you think, what your motives and incentives are, and yet not condemn nor justify, is an extraordinarily difficult thing to do. Because your whole culture is based on condemnation, judgment, and evaluation. You have been brought up on do this and not that. But if you can look in the mirror of relationship without creating the opposite, then you will find that there's no end to self-knowledge. You see, the inquiry into self-knowledge is an outward movement which later turns inward. First we look at the stars, and then we look within ourselves. In the same way, we look for reality, for God, for security, for happiness in the objective world, and when it is not found there, we turn inward. This search for the inner God, the higher self, or what you will, completely ceases through self-knowledge. And then the mind becomes very quiet, not through discipline, but just through understanding, through watching, through being aware of itself every minute without choice. Don't say, I must be aware every minute, because that is just another manifestation of our foolishness when we want to get somewhere, when we want to arrive at a particular state. What matters is to be aware of yourself and to keep on being aware without accumulating. Because the moment you accumulate, then from that center you judge. Self-knowledge is not a process of accumulation. It is a process of discovery from moment to moment in relationship. This reading is from Being and Becoming by Vimalataka. From some of the dialogues which took place at Dalhousie, India during the summer of 1989. We are talking about an alternative way of living, which is a meditative way of living. Acquire knowledge, let it flow through you, let it be utilized in its relevant field without creating a knower. If we look at the roots of all human misery, we will find that misery is built upon our stupidity. We do not know how to relate to the structures and use them without identification, without creating a sense of authority out of them. Structures are not sacred. It is only life that is sacred. Patterns have no sacredness, whether you create them in the name of religion, spirituality, or politics. It is the pattern-free, structure-free, virgin dynamism of life that is sacred, that is divine. Wherever you have touched it with thought, you have manipulated it, you have structured it. It has a utility, but not sanctity. It has a utility, but no authority. An alternative way of living is feeding the brain and the system with all the knowledge, the techniques, without getting identified with it. It is only identification with the knowledge that creates the illusion of the knower. And it is the creation of a knower that builds up your bondage. Knowledge itself has no power to bind you. It is the creation of the knower that is the obstacle. You have a beautiful, sensitive body, and the sensitivity gets in touch with the respective objects outside, and they bring sensations. Sensations are converted back to electric impulses, and the brain interprets them. It is a marvelous process of what we call experiencing. Contact with the outside world through the senses, which are very delicate, very tender. It is quite hard and arduous work to keep your sensual system pure, healthy, supple, and elastic. Let the experiences flow through the sensual system. Nothing wrong in a sensual, sexual experience, but you create an experiencer, and you get stuck in the experiencer and its likes and dislikes, its value structures, its preferences, its prejudices, its theories. If the sensual contact with objects is allowed to flow through you without creating an experiencer, then the limited human-made world cannot corrupt you. As the oneness of life manifesting itself into manyness does not get corrupted, does not lose its vitality, does not get mutilated. In the same way, you acquire knowledge and you appear as an individual playing the role of a father, a mother, a brother, a son, sister. You are one appearing as many. There's no identification with the fatherness, the sonness, the daughterness, the sisterness. And you don't tie so many knots inside, but play the roles sanely, completely with the magnificence of an inner equipoise. Then you're appearing as many, functioning as many. You're acquiring the knowledge of structures, and handling of structures shall not corrupt you. In the human-made world, one has to learn to let the knowledge flow without creating a knower, and let the experiences take place without creating an experiencer. That is the way of meditative living. The word meditation has been identified with psychophysical exercises, concentrations, methods, techniques, Kundalini Shakti paths. The word has been abused and misused in such a callous way. No authority and no effort. Freedom from authority and freedom from the struggle of efforts. Once you know that these human-made enclosures are only to be lived in, then the sense of comparing yourself with others, he has a palace and I have a hut, he has millions, I only have thousands. The sense of comparison and the ambition for competition disappears completely. Your economic life becomes simple. No vanity, no pride about your scholarship, erudition, and so forth. And your social life becomes simple. You do not move around with a begging bowl for sympathy, acceptance, prestige, acknowledgement, and so forth. Reconciled to the limitations, to the enclosures, you live and move in it. Can you see with me that effortlessness is the content of silence? Silence is inner freedom from the authority of the past. Silence is unconditional freedom from effort, and therefore the alternative way of living. Meditation has no repetition at all. It is moment to moment. In the moment of relating, you are living. In the moment of aloneness, you are dying. It is living and dying, like inhaling and exhaling. To be alone is to die to the sense of being somebody or being something. Is not that the content of death and dying? To be alone is to die to the sense of being somebody. Sinner, saint, holy, knowledgeable, respected, rich, and so forth. To be alone is to die to being something according to the definition of society, according to the value structure of religions. Physically isolating yourself may not lead you to the aloneness. It may not. That is what we are afraid of, dying to the sense of being somebody, dying to all the images that we have built up about ourselves. That is being alone. The way we are tackling the theme may be unusual, unheard of to many. It is a non-conventional way, a non-traditional approach. But I'm really grateful that life brings you and me together. For our last readings, poems from new and selected poems by Mary Oliver. A contemporary poet, Mary Oliver. The forest. At night, under the trees, the black snake jellies forward, rubbing roughly the stems of the bloodroot, the yellow leaves, little boulders of bark to take off the old life. I don't know if he knows what is happening. I don't know if he knows it will work. In the distance, the moon and the stars give a little light. In the distance, the owl cries out. In the distance, the owl cries out. The snake knows these are the owl's woods. These are the woods of death. These are the woods of hardship where you crawl and crawl, where you live in the husks of trees, where you lie on the wild twigs and they cannot bear your weight, where life has no purpose and is neither civil nor intelligent, where life has no purpose and is neither civil nor intelligent. It begins to rain, it begins to smell like the bodies of flowers. At the back of the neck, the old skin splits. The snake shivers but does not hesitate. He inches forward. He begins to bleed through like satin. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness. And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea. and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular, and each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does toward silence. And each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. Alligator poem. I knelt down at the edge of the water, and if the white birds standing in the tops of trees whistled any warning, I didn't understand. I drank up to the very moment it came crashing toward me, its tail flailing like a bundle of swords slashing the grass, and the inside of its cradle-shaped mouth gaping and rimmed with teeth. And that's how I almost died of foolishness in beautiful Florida. But I didn't. I leaped aside and fell, and it streamed past me, crushing everything in its path as it swept down to the water and threw itself in, and in the end, this isn't a poem about foolishness, but about how I rose from the ground and saw the world as if for the second time, the way it really is. The water, that circle of shattered glass, healed itself with a slow whisper and lay back, with a backlit light of polished steel. And the birds in the endless waterfalls of the trees shook open the snowy pleats of their wings and drifted away, while for a keepsake and to steady myself, I reached out. I picked the wild flowers from the grass around me, blue stars and blood-red trumpets on long green stems. For hours in my trembling hands, they glittered like fire. Singapore. In Singapore, in the airport, a darkness was ripped from my eyes. In the women's restroom, one compartment stood open. A woman knelt there, washing something in the white bowl. Disgust argued in my stomach, and I felt in my pocket for my ticket. A poem should always have birds in it, kingfishers say with their bold eyes and gaudy wings. Rivers are pleasant, and of course, trees, a waterfall, or if that's not possible, a fountain rising and falling. A person wants to stand in a happy place in a poem. When the woman turned, I could not answer her face. Her beauty and her embarrassment struggled together, and neither could win. She smiled, and I smiled. What kind of nonsense is this? Everybody needs a job. Yes, a person wants to stand in a happy place in a poem. But first we must watch her as she stares down at her labor, which is dull enough. She is washing the tops of the airport ashtrays, as big as hubcaps, with a blue rag. Her small hands turn the metal, scrubbing and rinsing. She does not work slowly nor quickly, but like a river. Her dark hair is like the wing of a bird. I don't doubt for a moment that she loves her life. And I want to rise up from the crust, and I want her to rise up from the crust and the slop and fly down to the river. This probably won't happen, but maybe it will. If the world were only pain and logic, who would want it? Of course it isn't. Neither do I mean anything miraculous, but only the light that can shine out of a life. I mean, the way she unfolded and refolded the blue cloth, the way her smile was only for my sake. I mean, the way this poem is filled with trees and birds. Entering the kingdom. The crows see me. They stretch their glossy necks in the tallest branches of green trees. I am possibly dangerous. I am entering the kingdom. The dream of my life is to lie down by a slow river and stare at the light in the trees. To learn something by being nothing. A little while. But the rich lens of attention. To learn something by being nothing a little while, but the rich lens of attention. But the crows puff their feathers and cry between me and the sun, and I should go now. They know me for what I am. No dreamer, no eater of leaves. The summer day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who's gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? We will end here for today.